Okay, I believe we're recording. And so with that, I'm gonna call in our presenters for tonight, Mitchell and Melanie. And I'll let you guys, the two of you, decide how you want to facilitate. And for the rest of us, we'll mute our computers and we will chime in as needed as the meeting is continues to go. So there we are. Melanie and Mitchell, flip a coin.
Mitch, you can go ahead and go. Are you there? Maybe he's not here.
Gotta find the unmute button.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Okay. Peter, what are you doing? Okay. So the primary part of the presentation is about nukes and overwintering them. I just pulled up one of my old presentations that basically talked about it, and it was called How I Maintain My Apiaries Without Migration. You know, we all would love to come out of winter seeing bees that look like this. It happens some years, but not all. So my goal is not to buy bees in, grow my apiary, sell queens and nukes, and produce honey. I think most people that get in beekeeping is either because they feel the bees need help or they want to produce some honey. And that's what my goal was when I started, and it's changed. So nukes for overwintering are started in June or early July. The later you start them, the more brood you do need to start them. So in June, you can start them with 2 fairly decent frames of brood, a frame of nectar, and an open frame, and a queen or a queen cell. If you start with a queen cell, you got to remember they need a little bit of more brood because they will be on a steady decrease the entire time once you make them. You can do walkaway splits. I don't recommend it because it's a full month plus that they are going to be queenless for, but you know, that's your option. I will most likely have queen cells available throughout the summer, at least once every other week, if not once a week. There are 3 sizes there's 3 sizes nuke box. I run primarily the 4 frame. The bottom box in the bottom right is a 6 frame box, and the top box is a 10 frame divided box that basically holds 2 4 frame nukes. And the box on the left side you put on top of it once they grow. So I winter them basically with 8 frames of bees and honey, and that is to allow me the opportunity to assess the bees, and as they grow up, it allows me to give them room so they don't swarm. And one of the biggest problems I have is swarming in August because they hit peak population. So I've been slowly working at manipulating when I start them, just due to the fact that a week difference in time allows them to build up in size but doesn't swarm. So effectively we get what we want. And if you start them in June, I normally put 4 frames of foundation on, bring up a frame of brood, put it next to the between the number 1 and the number 3 spot, which would be towards the center divider. And this way, when they hatch, they start working and drawing the comb out on the other frames. And sometimes you have to manipulate the fourth frame up and down sideways to make them draw it. But it gets you 4 new combs into your apiary, which helps you rotate your old combs out. I think that's a very important part. These are some pictures of nucs. The one is they basically reduced their hole down to a B size. The other 2 are pictures of frost on a cold winter morning. And you can tell your hive is alive because they have the upper entrance and they're venting out the moisture. You can even use the Warray hive design as a nuc. I mean, if that's what you run for bees, that's great. I think being completely standard isn't necessarily always needed. It allows you the options to adjust. And this is what happens when you drop a nuc when you're moving it in the middle of the night. You end up with a very large, grumpy hive all over. Box just separated while we're moving it into the bee yard. And, there was some bees that broke out. They basically settled down. It's really interesting how you can put your hand in front of the entrance on a cool spring night and feel the heat coming out. I mean, night and day difference in temperature. This is what I used to set up for cell building a couple of years ago. I'd shake the bees in, the cells would go above the queen excluder, but this allowed me to get enough nurse bees to build decent cells, to my opinion. But these are 6 frame nucs that I used. If I would start over, I would seriously think about going all 6 frames. They give you a little more buffer because you have 2 more frames than the 4 frames. They, at 11 inches wide, you can put 3 of them next to each other and put honey supers above them, which basically equals 2 brood chambers wide. Put a metal queen excluder on, make sure the queen excluder is touching the top of the hive body. There's a little gap in the center, make sure they're touching there. That's the most critical spot because she will get through there if you leave her a big enough gap. I've ran them for honey and I've had them produce, a 3-pack of hives that I made up in the spring, run for, 60 pounds of honey a piece. So, that's not a bad day out of a small cluster bee. The one thing you do have to be aware of is if you pull the honey off of something like that, that they literally have no storage in their brood chamber. So you have to have a plan that you're going to either feed them, move them into different equipment, give them frames of honey that you had left over from your dead outs from the year before. I think ultimately a lot of people would like to not have to buy bees every year. And currently my goal is to run about 60 production colonies. So if I figure that I'm going to have a 40% loss or 40%, a 20% loss with 10 to 15% that are not just viable big enough hives to make me a honey crop, I got to go into winter with 100 colonies. So I have to make up enough nucs to offset my winter losses so I don't have to go buy bees. This is a picture of a nuc yard that I have. So you can see the 4 frame nucs on top of the divided board. Sometimes I have to go to 4/4/4 just to make sure they don't swarm. I was talking to a friend that worked for a commercial beekeeper that runs 350 of these every year. And, in August, they'll go out and if the hive looks populous enough, they'll put up one on top with 3 foundations and 1 dark comb. And that gives the bees room to move up, helps keep them from swarming, and it makes life better. You don't have to come back at the end of the season and recombine the ones that swarm, because you got queen right ones, but you don't have enough bees. You know, you need enough bees that they can winter, and they will, with this configuration, they will conform to one central cluster. Basically, the two halves will kind of center in the hive and move up along each other.
Hey, Mitch, Dave Lambert here. Can you go back one slide?
That one?
No, the one that you're just showing all the different, the 4/4. Yes, that one.
Yeah.
Can you comment just for a second on the bricks you have on top of the hives? And I notice they're all in different configurations, and what do they mean? Do you use those to indicate something with the
I
hives?
try, but by the time I get done, I fail.
All right,
Usually the ones that are vertically upright are, keep an eye on those, or they need more room. Sometimes you go to the bee yard thinking that you're just going to go look at some bees and you didn't bring any equipment. Those are the days that you need equipment. So, and the next day you pack all this equipment and you take it home and you unload it all. So
gotcha.
that
Okay.
is sometimes, I try to, I haven't came up with a good mastered brick method. Helps if all your bricks are roughly the same, because I got some bricks that are spatially square. So, like this spring when I went out and checked them, if they were alive, I put them parallel to the frames, and if they were dead, I put them across the top of the frames. And if one side was live, I would put it on the side that was live and the other side was dead. If it was in center, it was both alive.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
This is a hive that needs room. They got a little opening so they can vent the heat. And I can see that my inner cover was on top of them, so the queen didn't take, but they had a virgin hatch that was basically a walkway split, because I grab sometimes young enough larvae that they can make their own. So I number my frames on the year, trying to just keep a better track of how old frames are in my operation. It's amazing how old frames get when you don't know how old they are until you run across one that has 14 on it. Well, I guess that one's older than I thought it was, but it looks good. So sometimes they stick around, and it's amazing. I was inspecting hives this week, the amount of entombed pollen on some bees, and the next hive doesn't have it. Large population, large enough to go in winter. A 4/4, I figure you need to be somewhere in that 60 to 70 pounds of honey, probably 60, 65 pounds. A 5/5, I'd go upwards of 75. If you do a 6/6, you need to, and it's not honey, it's bees and equipment and everything, 80, 85 pounds. I've wintered single 6-frame nucs that weighed 45 to 50 pounds, and they winter, and they actually build up quite nicely if they have enough honey and they didn't eat it all. I've struggled to winter single 4-frame nucs. I would not recommend someone, you can try it if you have one that didn't make it to 4 frames or 8 frames, but I would not do it regularly. And it's always a good sign when you split the brood chamber and you see honey from top, that they're filling out the colony like that. Ultimately, it would be really nice not to have to feed them, but our fall flow is very hit or miss. So if you use a mated queen, I would check back 7 to 10 days, and you can most likely add a second box, because once she is released, she's laying eggs, as you see in the picture, and they're raring to go. If you use a queen cell, you know, you got 2 weeks. I would want check back for 21 days, and then you most likely, unless you overbuilt them, won't need to add a second box for another week. But that's the easiest time to find her is around 21 to 28 days. They are effectively, they're at the lowest point of bees that they're going to have in the hives. Because once the new bees start hatching, the hive will grow very fast. And then check back every 2 to 3 weeks afterwards. And if they need more room, give it to them. If they need feed, you know, you got to pay attention to the weather. I mean, like right now, you're, you know, looking at what rain we've gotten, you know, we're getting pretty dry, and, you know, it might be a year I have to feed very many of my nucs.
Nick, or sorry, Wayne, we have a question from Pete Haug asking, so your most successful configuration is to winter with 2 4+4 side by sides, or would a 6+6 winter better?
I've wintered both. I just started wintering 6+6/6 this last year, and they wintered very nicely. They built up extremely fast and hard. You know, there's a lot you can do. And
All right, I'm just asking the question for him.
I can't see any of that because I'm presenting.
I know, and that's why I interrupted you. Okay,
So-
go back to your presentation.
Honey production, we'd love to all see this. This was actually a yard that was all built with overwinter nucs. So they, you know, I had some this year that came out with 6 to 8 frames of brood here the last 2 weeks when I was installing them. You know, good honey production. Sometimes I'm not tall enough to work them. My goal is to raise queens from the northern stock. I'm working at bringing in the VSH trait. A queen with good longevity and good honey production. I'm starting to go away from the longevity part, just for the fact that in Varroa control and stuff, it's extremely hard on our queens. So I don't think longevity is as easy to attain right now. Hives that need minimal fall feeding, and then I'm collaborating with some other Wisconsin beekeepers with the beekeeping program. Queens, I love catching queens. I run mating nucs, single frames of brood. You can, if you buy, say you wanted to run 4 or 6 nucs going into winter, you could easily make up a couple extra when you're mating, if you bought your queen cells from someone, and make up a couple extra that are 1 frame of brood, a frame of honey, and a couple open frames, and just make them up. So if you want 6, you can have 6 when you're done, because it's about an 80% average to have a 80% queen take is good. Anything above that is getting into the exceptional range. So, you know, sometimes just having a couple extra queens around, or otherwise you go in and you want to requeen your production hive, you can do it. There's options. This is a picture of a mini mating nuc frame. The frame is literally no wider than what you see there. It's a half a medium frame, and they are used for mating queens. There's the picture of the box. Mite control. I still treat all my nucs as much as I don't want to. Mites are around. I am, this year I got involved with BIPs, so I'm my first sample went in the mail today. Currently I treat 3 to 4 times a year. I monitor for mites. I used to do in mid-June a half dose of formic. I don't know if I'm doing that this year. By August 20th, a full dose of formic or Apigard. I would even push that up closer to the 10th now. Just starting to see how the mites grow and how to keep them down. It's easier to knock a count of 10 down than a count of 20. And, and early August, I've noticed the last couple of years have been a little bit cooler, in the range that I can use formic. By mid-August, you might not be able to get formic gun until the 1st of September. And then late October, early November, I do an oxalic acid vaporization. Here's a picture of mites in the bottom of the cells. This was drone brood. It's just the more you see and the more you learn, you got to be aware of it. Feeding, I tend to try to have my bees fed up by the 1st of October. I do some final feeding the first week of October, final treatments, and winter wraps. I use tar paper, and I've had good luck with it. It's more to fill the cracks between the boxes that my boxes have than to provide any warmth, and it does allow some warmth on those cold winter days when the bees need to be able to move. That bee has 2 different colors of pollen. I've been to several different EAS conferences. I've met Michael Palmer and several other people. I'm actually good friends with some of these people. I take my kids along. This is a picture of a hive that's basically made out of 1x6s, rough cut. They're all cut the same length. They square them up and they pair the boards, and then they use they staple in a piece of like lath for a frame rest, and they use bamboo skewers for their frames. A double dilute drone, I've seen 2 in my life. Some people have worked bees for many, many years and never seen it. It's part of inbreeding. It's a very rarity. Frames of pollen, and my lonely bee.
Okay, 2 slides back, you showed what was with that bee you were showing, that rarity?
It has 2 white eyes.
Oh.
It's effectively blind.
Okay. Any questions for Mitch? Three, two.
And
Hey, Mitch, Dave Lambert here. So what are you going to treat your bees with this spring here for bites?
I did Apivar. I put it on the first part of March, did my 6 weeks treatment, and got it pulled so I could get honey supers on. So synthetic miticide, from what I'm seeing for data so far, it looks like it worked very well, but it is still much up in the air. We'll see how we look in August. It's extremely hard to treat with the roller coaster of temperatures we have. The one thing I've been pre-warned with formic is if it gets too cold and you just put it on, you can basically burn your whole hive completely out. So, be mindful of the weather, read the directions, and hopefully it works for you.
Alan is asking, what is your winter survival rate percent?
So my overall winter survival rate last year was 76%.
Okay.
From talking with another beekeeper, if you get to 85%, you're pretty much at the level of where you can magically achieve. Get better than that is kind of hard.
Okay. Melanie, what do you got to say to us? You're muted. You're muted, Melanie. Sorry. And Mitch,
Can
do
you
you want to
hear?
close your screen?
Did I get there?
Your screen is still up.
Oh, wonderful. Stop.
There we
There.
go.
Okay. So I have never known how to share my screen. I'll try. I only have a few slides.
Okay.
So I'm talking about nukes as well. And Mitch and I talk a lot, compare notes. But my method's a little bit different than his. So I tend to do 5/5 nukes, 5-frame nukes. And let me see. The problem is I don't know how to pick up the. Are you still seeing me?
Yes. If you were to go to share screen, oh, there you are. You got something there. Okay, we see your main computer.
Do you see the screen now? The
I see Lazy
PowerPoint?
Goat Studio.
Okay, good. Didn't know how to do that. I just have a few slides, but
Okay.
so I'm Lazy Goat Studio. I overwinter, I do all my nukes in 5/5. So 5-frame boxes of nukes. And like Mitch, I really want a sustainable apiary. And to me, that means not buying bees. I do bring queens in from time to time. When I bring them in, I try to make sure that they're the type of queen that I'm looking for from a northern setting. I really don't want to bring in southern or western bees because I just don't think in the end they're serving me well up here in the north. So I do raise our own queens, and I know not everybody wants to try raising your own queens. My queens for me are doing very well, but it hasn't been overnight. It's taken me a long time to get here. For most of you who I don't think want to raise your queens, to me, the best option out there is looking for local sources of queens, whether it would be a queen or more likely a nuke cell. And Mitch will have nuke cells. There are folks in the cities that will have nuke cells. I will have some. I raise the cells for myself, but I'm trying to raise more so that I have some on hand if somebody else wants some cells. So in this picture, I'm showing 2 5-frame deeps of nuke boxes. Can you see the whole screen there, or that must be me doing that. Okay, 5-frame deep boxes. These are, to me, it's very important that my overwintered nukes, that those queens are mated after the summer solstice, which would be June 21st. And I make nukes before that because, like all of you, I have bees that want to make more hives. So I intentionally make nukes ahead of that period in time because those are the nukes that I use to requeen a hive that I've lost a queen in. Those are nukes that I raise intentionally just to be able to harvest the brood from for later nukes, or because I'm raising my own queens for my queen cell builders. I'm constantly pulling out brood, and those early nukes will make, as when you're feeding them and the weather is good, they will make a lot of bees very quickly. But for my overwintered nukes, I don't really want anything unless she's just doing spectacular. I don't really want a nuke that has been mated before the 21st of June. And the reason I say that, it's taken me a while to understand that, is it's all about cycles with these bees for us here. I don't about somewhere else. But for us here, if you raise a queen earlier than the summer solstice, she essentially is a full production queen all summer long. She does her whole stint all summer long. And that's okay, but she has a less chance of survival going through the fall. And then she'll really be a year old come next spring. She's no longer a new queen, if that makes sense. So when I raise my nucs for myself to keep over the winter, I want those queens mated after the 21st of June so that they're not going through a whole cycle of summer. They're not just killing themselves. And those are the ones that are over winter. So normally what happens for me is they'll fill out that first box and I'm always feeding them. I always feed them. As the summer goes on, I feed them periodically. I don't feed them constantly. And the subtle thing that I have learned with nucs and talking to other queen breeders is the more you feed them, they tend to just fill up those frames with sugar syrup and there's no place for brood. So I try to just watch them and feed them periodically. They always have pollen patties on them and I make my own protein patties. So going into the winter, these nucs will be 2 5-frame boxes of bees. And I'm feeding them fairly heavy as quickly as I can as we get into the fall at that point. And I want those things solid. And then as I get ready to go further in over winter, I actually add a 3rd box of honey frames that I've, pulled from other hives. And I put a 3rd box on these that's nothing but honey. So going into the winter, they're 3 boxes high. And then again, I'm a little bit different than Mitch. I make styrofoam boxes to go over all my overwintered nucs. So these nucs have they don't have the traditional top on them. They just have an inner cover that I've covered the hole in. So I want no upper entry, just a bottom entry that's fairly open. I put wire in there usually. And these boxes are made with 2 inches of styrofoam on all the sides and 4 inches on the top. And they just slide, I've just got them designed so they just slide right over my boxes. The thing that I have learned the hard way is these are, as the spring goes on, these bees do really well. I mean, these are just going to be loaded in the spring with bees and they all migrate to the top, which makes them very top heavy. So I have now learned that there'll have to be 2 nucs side by side. Probably next winter, I'll rotate the other entry so that they're not side by side. And then I'm going to latch them. I think side by side, they're okay, but I had them individually and I was having them tip over here this spring. But side by side, they seem to do quite well. So this is what I do. So that's just the pink hard styrofoam that you buy. And to protect it for the sun, it's painted. It's actually, it's quite a bit of work, but you get used to it after a while.
Quick question for you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you have to feed them, how do you access them for food in the winter?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't feed them. I don't feed them during the winter. So these are already fed up before I put the boxes on. And I guess the other thing I should say is I make sugar bricks. Now this is just me, folks. So, we're all a little bit different, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is just me. I don't like to put my sugar bricks on late in the fall because I think it tends to keep your bees up on top of your boxes.
Okay.
That's me. I would rather wait and come back in January on a sunny day. This literally takes me 2 minutes. I slip this box straight up, open the inner cover that's on it and slide the brick inside. That's it. That's how fast I can do it. So
Okay.
that I come back in January and add the sugar bricks.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question, do you use a moisture board in the winter too or not?
Yeah, I do. So, no, I take that back. I don't. I do on my production hives, but not on the nucs. And I will tell you this, on the production hives, they're cold on the inside, so I use a moisture board. On these, this is I'm following several other beekeepers. This is not new to me. I'm following what other successful beekeepers have done, one in the north, one here in the States. And the bees create their own ventilation from the bottom. So it goes up and it comes down. These nucs are warm on the inside, so they don't have the condensation that a cold nuc has or a cold hive has. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep, as long as
okay.
you have good insulation, I guess it would make sense.
Yes. So I don't have a condensation problem with these. I don't. And I know that kind of goes against everything we've been taught, but that's the way it's working.
Radical.
Well, I'm not the first. I'm just following others that have done it. So the way these have come through, I've taken the top box off. Now, probably as of March, I have essentially 3 boxes full of bees. And the most weight of the bees are in those top boxes. That's what tends to make them top heavy. But they've cleaned out all the honey that was in the top box, and it's full of brood. And right now I have 5 to 8 frames of brood in all these nucs. I have a lot of brood. And I have kept these supplied because I check them, I'm checking them every couple weeks. I have kept them supplied with bricks, sugar bricks, and protein patties up until now. And for the most part, they have done very, very well. When I've lost very few, the ones I have lost tipped over when it was -20, and I couldn't get them up fast enough without losing the bees. So, anyhow, I have been waiting and waiting and waiting because the nights have been so cold. The days have been okay, but the nights have been so cold, and I wasn't sure if I've waited too long. But just in the last few days, I have uncovered these all at the same time. I've moved these bees into 2 10 frames and a super, trying to keep the brood together as much as possible, not separating the brood. So either keeping brood above brood, not breaking it up, if that makes any sense. And they're just doing fabulous. But I notice, as Mitch said earlier, some of them are a little hungry. Some of them are full of pollen. Some of them are almost pollen free. So I'm adding pollen, gobs of pollen right now.
Melanie, I have a person that is asking the question, define sugar brick.
Well, sugar brick is something that I make. Rather than making a sugar board like some people do, I make bricks out of they're like I actually make them in loaf pans, flexible loaf pans, and they're probably about 1 inch and an inch and a half thick. They are made with sugar, apple cider vinegar, and a little dash of is it B-Pro, whatever that stuff is that smells so good, B-Pro or whatever it's called. And I put those in the oven on low, about 170 degrees for about an hour. Turn it off because I'm not cooking them. I'm just drying them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're hard. They're hard like a brick. They fit under my winter inner covers, and the bees love them. Mm-hmm.
Maybe
And
you
they're
could
easy.
share that recipe with us when you figure that out.
Yeah, I have it. I can share
Okay,
that
thank you.
as my, and that's from another experienced queen beekeeper. And the protein patties I make also, and I really think those are important, and those have some interesting ingredients in them as well, and they really eat them up. So yeah, for me, they make a big difference.
Yeah.
I guess that's it. So I'm not sure if I've covered everything, but I just would encourage everybody. To me, I know Mitch uses different things. I'm not trying to pull honey off these. I want these to use their own honey. So I want them to use their own honey. I don't want to pull honey off from them. And we're just a little bit different. I don't have a swarm issue with these. I think because they're just a little bit bigger than a 4 frame, a 5 frame. But I also watch them pretty closely. So this is my opinion. When you start your nukes out earlier in the year and they have a full season, they're going to swarm, in my opinion, before you get to fall. And so remember, these are all mated after the 21st of June.
The box you're showing us there has only got 4 frames.
Oh, most of them have 5. Sometimes they get kind of thick.
Okay, I'm just wondering. And then the other part of it, are you making your own nuke boxes?
No, this one looks pretty old and decrepit, but no, I buy them.
Okay.
They're just standard 5 frame. They're deeps, 5 frame
Yeah.
deeps.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Other questions, anyone?
After when she moves in, those are the spring, she moves them into a regular hive.
In the spring, you move them into a regular deep as you've got over here, and you create a production hive out of those that you overwintered, correct?
That's right. So I just moved these, and I probably should have done it a few weeks ago, but it was so cold out at night. I was kind of
Yeah.
afraid to. But getting into these in the last few days, there were so many bees in these hives, a lot of brood, but so many bees in these hives. I could have moved them to those 10 frames, and I think they could have kept the brood warm and they would have been okay. But, I was a little hesitant. So as I've moved these all up in the last few days, I have found a lot of queen cells. I mean, they're early queen cells, but it would have probably been better for me to have moved them up a week or 2 ago. But they're all moved up. This is one that just came from yesterday.
I really enjoyed, I did make up a nuke last year that I overwintered, and this spring I moved it out. And again, I was much like you were, Melanie. I had at least 8 frames of brood. I could have done a split. I'm glad I didn't, because it's been so cold. But when it was starting to warm up initially, I thought, man, I should do a split right now. Instead, I left it, and I've got a hive that is busting at the hive. It's crazy, which is good. But the other part of it, as I really am intrigued by this nuke work, to be able to raise our own bees, to be able to, if I have to, move something into another hive that's not doing so well, I can do that. I've got the bees right here.
Yeah. I'd really like to encourage everybody to do this. And I said again, try and buy local queen cells. If you're unsure how to use a queen cell, it's easier than working with a queen. And I'm sure one of us out of the club would just kind of walk you through it your first time. And get capable of doing that. One, it's going to cost you less money, but 2, you're going to have a better hive. And it's so much fun to watch them grow. So,
It is.
and just know that our local queen cells are not usually available early in June, but you can pull cells from your own hive and make up a nuke for an early nuke. But wait for those local queen cells, because they're really worth it for your overwintered nukes.
Okay.
What about letting them raise their own queen?
Or what you're saying then is letting them raise their own queen in that point, right?
No, not really. I mean, I'm not talking about a walk away split or something like that. I'm talking about using making up a nuke. For example, taking a 5 frame box. And if we want that queen mated after the 21st of June, we could do it the last week in June. So by that time, we'd probably put 2.5 to 3 frames of brood in a 5 frame box. take a frame that's part honey and part pollen, put it in there, and 1 empty frame. To that, you're going to add a nuc cell. And a nuc cell, when it's ready to go, is sitting in a little plastic hub that you just press into the wax. And then you cover that nuc up, you put feed on it, and you leave it alone for about 18 to 19 days. You don't even check it. And here's the other thing I should say. For mite control, after you've put that queen cell on day 18 or 19, and that you open that nuc up and you find eggs in there, that's when you do your mite control, because at that point right then is when you can do an oxalic dribble on your bees, and you've cleaned everything up before they get those new cells capped. Does that make sense? And
Yep.
you've got a miteless nuc at that point, as much as you can have.
Dave Lambert is asking for us to, talk about the hive treatments in the spring. And now is the spring. And Melanie, if you were to click on your share screen and close that out, that'll give us back to our, everybody shares kind of thing. Well, you're getting there.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. You're learning, and I am too. I kind of went to school on you tonight. But there should be up on the, I think it's up on the top of your screen. There should be a red box that says that you can.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. She's back.
Okay.
All right, so Dave Lambert and Dave, you can weigh in here too, but I think what you're saying is we need to have some talk about hive treatments. So Mitch, Dave, Melanie, someone start talking.
Well, since I'm here, maybe I'll be really brief and then let everybody else jump in. So right now I'm dealing with production hives, because these nucs that I've overwintered are now production hives, the way I look at them.
Right.
So I put my first treatment on, and I could have done it earlier, but I didn't. So I just put it on, and I'm going to watch these bees. Right now, I think they're pretty clean. What I did last year is I monitored my mites, and I went all the way to June before I used Formic. And when I used Formic, I did half a treatment.
Okay, but what did you use now?
Well, I used, and I don't remember the name of it. It's not Tactic. Is it Apiguard, or what is it, guys? I want to say the right name so you all know.
And I don't.
Apivar. I used Apivar.
Okay, thank you.
And what you need to understand about my hives right now, when you see 2 deeps and a super on it, that's how my production hives are overwintered, 2 deeps and a super.
Okay.
And as far as the nucs go, you do that oxalic drip, and then I might use oxalic again later on in the summer on the nucs.
Okay, go ahead, Mitch. What are you gonna add?
I did Apivar in March, due to the fact that I knew I was going to be putting honey supers on them before I ever got anywhere this year. I mean, the biggest issue you have when you have 8-9 frames of brood right now is they're going to peak out here 1st of June, and our main flow isn't for another month. So I might change how much pollen I feed them. I am definitely going to start a week or 2 later. I don't want them to get as big next year, preferably. It's nicer if they have a little room to grow before, we hit the main flow. Otherwise, you end up chasing these swarms that are hanging in the trees, and that's not a fun job. And I highly recommend anyone, if you have package bees, overwintered bees, it's more important that you get some sort of spring treatment on. If it's formic here in, the next month, doing 2 half doses, not so hard on the bees, not, it's relatively easy. I recommend doing something because otherwise you will be at 30 mites in August, and it's a hard feed to come back from. I like to see people being able to winter bees in the, 70% range and not struggling at it. I mean, I think it's doable, but mite monitoring is number one. Number two, feeding your bees early, because it's hard to convince bees to take feed once it gets too cold. Those are two things that once I figured it out, it's beekeeping became easier. It's easier to feed bees in September when it's 70 degrees out than when it's sleeting and misting, cold, wet weather in October, and you're trying to feed them 4 gallons of feed. And if they need 4 gallons of feed, they probably needed feed to raise good winter bees.
Okay. I hear you. Anybody else on spring treatments? Dave, do you want to weigh in, or Jerome? Dave?
No, I'm just curious to see what other people are doing. So sounds about right.
Okay, so you're doing that too then?
I'm in the process of doing that. Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll be honest, I haven't treated mine yet. So I guess I better get on my stick here and go to work.
I recommend reading. The biggest thing is read the labels, understand how and when you can use honey supers on them. Because if formic, you can technically use it with honey supers on. I question how if I double the hive cavity size, how it actually is as effective as a double brood chamber. That is one of those questions I have. I can use it with honey supers on. Well, I got 4 honey supers on. How does that actually work? Because there's way more surface area than what there originally was. So
Okay.
I've put it. I think what works best, if you're really concerned about mites and you're gonna honey super, if you go out, put it on 3-4 days before you're gonna super, get that initial hit, and then put your supers on. Now you didn't. I mean, effectively, the majority of the mite kill is in the first 4 days.
Okay. And Dale is saying he's been treating since March. So
Just a couple comments on Apivar. They recommend you do not use Apivar if the bees are still in cluster. So you have to be careful using it too early. And just another comment, a commercial beekeeper friend of mine who's really become a mentor does his nucs. And when he dribbles his oxalic on those nucs at day 18 or 19, he says that he just feels it works really wonderfully, but you have to actually cover the bees with the dribble. You can't just spray it down the seams of the bees. So I just thought I'd throw that out because I mean, he does thousands of nucs, so.
awesome. Well, friends, we got our debates or our presentations. I really would like you to talk among yourselves and look at your summer schedules, see what you have got available. We will need help at the county fairs, and we've only got our June meeting to really stabilize that, flesh that out. And then of course, August, one is in Pierce County, so that gives us July. And I am conversing. I'm not trying to push the envelope here. For us either to be able to meet outside or meet loosely. I know that for some people this is just hard to do. We're open. I'm not going to limit anybody to or force anybody into an agenda on or working with this, but I do want to ask you if there's an opportunity that we might be able to meet somehow here. Carl was out here with some people this afternoon working the inspections. So we're continuing with our hands-on teaching, but we'll have to watch and see. Dave would like to give an update on the Youth Mentor Program. If you would, Dave, you've got the floor.
Sure, thanks, and appreciate everything. Good presentation tonight, Mitchell and Melanie. It's very interesting to hear other people's perspective about raising queens and nucs and how to get bees through the winter. So really, really informative. And I mean, personally, I believe that that's the key for us as beekeepers is to figure out a method, a process that works for us. We saw two tonight that worked really well. One works for Mitch, one works for Melanie. They're different systems that they use, but the whole concept is to come out of the winter with nucs of bees that you can use to get your own hives going again in the spring without having to go out and purchase more bees. And I think really that's what we need to be focusing on. So thanks, Mitch and Melanie, for sharing all that information. The other thing that I wanted to just update everybody on was a youth mentorship program. This year, we did have one person that we did award the sponsorship to. Her name was Sage. I'm happy to say that we were able to get some bees. Jerome worked with a beekeeper of his that donated a nuc that we gave to Sage. So the club did not have to purchase bees this year. So thank you, Jerome, for doing that. I can tell everyone that last weekend, I went and we set up Sage's hive. We installed the nuc. We went through all the equipment. It's got a nice location. Looks like it should do pretty well. I think, but the most important thing for me to share with everybody is that the fact that Charlene Tuck stepped up to the plate and she offered to sponsor Sage for this year. So it's really nice to see the membership step up and help sponsor some of these youth. You know, it's a great opportunity, as I've said in the past, to learn, because I guarantee you when you work with a youth, somebody that's new into beekeeping, they're going to ask you questions that you never thought of before. And just last weekend, we were working with Sage and we're talking about bees and queens and queen excluders, and Sage says, well, why don't you want the queen up into the honey supers? So they press you to make you think about what you're doing, and without actually pressing them to give you those questions. So I'm really happy that Charlene Tuck was able to step up and help out with this with this year's award winner. And so I think it's going to be not this weekend, but the following weekend. We are going to go down there to the Ellsworth, Elmwood area, and we'll do the whole transfer. And Charlene Tuck will be taking over and mentoring Sage for the rest of the next 2 years. So I want to just personally thank Charlene for stepping up to the plate, even though she's not on tonight's call. But that's what I wanted to update everybody on. So I appreciate everything. Thank you.
I appreciate that commercial message too, because we need opportunities for us to keep bringing the next generation up in this program. So thankful that we've been able to take some time together. Once again, this will be is recorded, and so it can be viewed again if you want to share it with somebody that wasn't able to be at the meeting. You just go to our St. Croix Beekeeper website, sign as a member, and then as a member, then you can review this and try and process it all over again. There's a lot of information given here today. So echoing Dave, Mitchell, and Melanie, wonderful. Thank you for your time, your resourcing for us.
Hey, we got one last thing.
Oh,
Our next presenter is Zach Lamas. He's a PhD student at the University of Maryland doing bee research. He's going to talk to us about requeening, purpose for requeening, and options to do. he's coming via Zoom because he's in Maryland or somewhere in the United States. I don't know where he is ever.
Yeah.
But he's doing bee research, and I've actually seen the presentation, and it's a very well put together presentation, and he does a great job presenting it. I'd like to see you guys all again in person. So
Well, if we, if we get the Zoom or the live stream, however he wants to present it, we can either put it up on the screen in the sanctuary. We have seating for 110 in there right now. We could allow it in the fellowship hall. Maybe we could even, I believe we'd be able to pull it off of a Zoom. So if people were not feeling comfortable coming, that they would be able to remain where they were and still experience it. So
I think that's a very viable.
Mitchell is working very hard at making sure we're together by October, because he really does want to do the mead and hard cider meeting. Dead serious. We'll have some fun. All right. Along with that, unless anybody else has anything else they'd like to chime in on, we're a club, so feel free to do that. But
this is Dan. I want
Yeah,
to say that everybody missed a smokeless hive inspection tonight by Carl. I was impressed.
smokeless.
Yes.
Wow.
Shows you how moving nice and slowly and working with the bees works pretty well.
Wow. Very good.
Sunshiny day.
Sunshiny day. All right.
Yep.
Hey, thank you. If you can connect on any of those bee inspections, especially for novices, that's a fantastic way. Asking questions, being able to inspect things, and maybe being able to. Is the next one going to be like without a bee suit? There's your challenge. All right. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Peace out. Thank you very much for being with us. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Great speakers.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Nice graphics.
people know how to do all that stuff.